Hi, this is Shannon Torrance, and this is Magic is Real. Today, my guest is Sheena Metal. Sheena is an actor and a radio talk show host, and she's able to use this platform as an opportunity to share her gifts as a psychic medium. My talk with Sheena is kind of like a coffee date without the coffee. We generally just have a lighthearted chat about her spiritual path, her near-death experience, and she gives us some really deep insight into what our dogs are trying to tell us telepathically. I'll give you a hint, it's usually meat product related. If you enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Thank you so much, and here's my conversation with Sheena Metal. Hey guys, it's Shannon Torrance, and this is Magic is Real. My guest today is Sheena Metal. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Normally I introduce my guests, I tell you about them, but Sheena is a psychic medium. I'll start with that. But she's also a podcaster. I say radio host, but these days, is it radio? Is it podcast? Is it YouTube? It's all of the above. So, because she's actually so good at, being a host herself, I'm going to have Sheena Metal introduce herself. Hi, Sheena. Thanks so much for being
Hi,
here.
how are you? It's so great to be here, my friend. Yeah, I'm Sheena, and I'm a psychic medium. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a 26-year Los Angeles talk radio host. I still say radio because maybe I'm old. I think of a podcast more as like, what we do now. Right now, I'm sitting on my bed. I guess I think of radio as more structured conversation. So to me, if there's a conversation, it's radio. If it's just somebody with their own thoughts meandering without guests, sometimes I guess I consider that more podcasting. I started as an actor, and I still am. I'm a writer, director, producer. That was my life until some stuff happened, and my life became different. And the inside of my artistic work, which was always spiritual, came out and became the outside of my life. So it's like I feel like I'm wandering around the world with my underwear turned inside out. That's basically what the last 5 years of my life has been.
That is so cool. So let's start with tell us about whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Sure.
I'd love to start with when you were as a child.
Mhm.
What was your attitude towards spirituality? What was your familiarity with religion, spirituality, or did you have a belief system? How were you raised?
I was raised sort of Presbyterian, and I always call that Christian light, because all I remember about the times we went to church was that a man would stand up in front of everybody and say something about God, something about Jesus, and then talk about how great the refreshments were. And people would literally stampede like their lives depended to the basement, where there was amazing coffee cake and cookies and punch. And I loved it. And I didn't think much even about that until a couple of years ago, when I myself became ordained and then became pastored with the Metropolitan Community Church at their founders church. And I now belong to something called LaQuick, which is the Los Angeles Queer Interfaith Clergy Council. And at the first meeting, they served coffee cake, and it was amazing. And I thought, oh, this is what church really is. It's not the size of your coffee cake, it's what you do with it. But it really is about the coffee cake for me. So anyway, I didn't really grow up with religion, so to speak. My mom was very into Christmas, very into her nativity. It had like 400 pieces on it. There was like 75 camels. She loved movies about Jesus and the 10 Commandments, but the actual the cultural stuff that people kind of push on each other in religions, I didn't grow up with any of that. I always had the freedom to do what I wanted, think what I wanted. I was never baptized. I actually got baptized for the first time in 2019 on her birthday, after she had passed, because she always felt, she said, someday, honey, you'll find the place where you belong, and then you'll want to get baptized. And she was right. So then when I was, I was always very into reincarnation, and I grew up kind of obsessed with the Civil War and Abraham Lincoln from the time I was like 2 years old. And then I guess I was my first year of college, I started thinking about what that really meant. I grew up in a very conservative part of Southern California, and I realized that really wasn't for me, that kind of evangelical Christianity. So what was for me? Then I went to my mom and said, what do you think about this? And she said, oh, thank God. I've always believed in that, but I want to push it on you. And that kind of became a metaphysical journey for us both, a new age journey. And then somewhere along the line, I guess I just realized I was interfaith. And for me, it's what I like to call spiritual salad bar, right? You walk into the spiritual salad bar, you put what resonates with you on your plate, and what doesn't resonate, you don't put on your plate, but you're not angry that it's there. In the same way that if you go to Sizzler, you're not angry because you don't like the onions. You just don't take them. And that's kind of how I try to do my sermons as a pastor, is just, hey, whatever resonates with you, that builds your spiritual palate. And that's really the essence of who you are. And it changes. There are times where, I'm very into Buddha. There are times where I'm now with this gig at a progressive Christian church. I've sort of recaptured a lot of the teachings of Christ that I loved. There are times where I'm very Native American spirituality. I'm Irish American, so I'm always very the old religion, the old pagan Celtic religion. It just, honestly, it depends how I feel at the time. Just like when you go to Sizzler, you don't always get the same salad. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Actually, when I was a kid, one of my best friends was Methodist. So I asked
sure.
my mom if we could go to church. And my mom said, "Sure, we'll try Methodist," but she and my dad found it boring. So she said, "Why don't we do," and my dad then was kind of out, but she said, "Why don't we do the Unitarian Church?" Which was
Okay,
great. It
nice.
was right next to the temple. I grew up in Westport, Connecticut. So it was, we had a
Mhm.
lot of a large Jewish population, or at least it was very celebrated anyway. And so we went to the Unitarian Church, where instead of traditional Sunday school, we read the Tao of Pooh, and I
Nice.
played Rosa Parks in the whatever the play was that we put together. Obviously, for lack of, I guess, casting, I grew up in also a very waspy town, so there weren't very many people to represent
Yes.
Rosa Parks, and I just put on a gray wig and played her. So it was this very more loose kind of feeling about my mom liked the community of it. She said, I don't really want to kind of commit to any kind of
Yeah.
religion, but she also wanted me to choose. And so she bought me
Yes.
the children's Bible and said, "This is what some people think, some people don't, and you make up your own, you decide what resonates with you," which I really appreciate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I am, my mom was exactly the same way. I think I'd been pretty much everywhere by the time I was 10. Every kind of religion of anybody she could find, she would send me off with them to a service to see what it was like. And the truth was, I loved it all, but none of it really felt like home to me. Nothing felt like it's where I wanted to be. And it was really the community aspect of being at MCC that was really what kind of drew me in and made me want to be pastored there. And it was a very clandestine thing where I had a friend. I have a friend who's a staff pastor, but mostly retired there, that I know through my advocate work. And he and I are good buddies. And I kept thinking to myself, what I really want to do is get involved with MCC. And I thought, well, that'll never happen because it's cliquey and people grow up in that church. And then, all churches are cliquey. And I didn't know. And then one day, a mutual friend of his and mine came to one of the gatherings for my nonprofit, my spiritual nonprofit. And she called me the next day and said, "You need to talk to Steve and become a pastor at MCC." And I thought, well, that's never going to happen. I mean, I was ordained at the time, but all I was doing was my nonprofit, which is kind of my ministry. And I called him and it was like, ha, 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 guess what she thinks we should do. And he's like, "Oh, that's a great idea, but I don't make the decisions there because I'm mostly retired. So let me bring our brand new senior pastor on your radio show and then you guys can meet." And then I met Keith Mazingo, and it was like he was my husband from another life.
Hmm.
And we instantly became buddies. And I think he asked me out to lunch, and it was at that lunch at the now defunct Jerry's Famous Deli. And we all need to take a moment of silence and pray for Jerry's Famous Deli. The
Yes.
COVID got it. It was at that time that he said, "I have this idea of expanding MCC, the Founders Church, past just progressive Christianity and into more of an interfaith thing." Because he sort of likens all the letters, right, of the spiritual salad bar, like all the letters of the queer community. And MCC was founded 52 years ago by folks that were kicked out of their own evangelical churches because they were part of the queer community. And he sort of saw that as the queer community is expanding, so our people's spiritual identity is becoming a spectrum, and we should start an interfaith thing. And because we're the Founders Church, it should start here. And so he said, what do you want to do with it? And I said, what do you want me to do? And he's like, whatever you want to do. So I've had this beautiful freedom. It'll be 2 years in June. And I do Saturday night spiritual. We do Saturday nights because their services are all on Sunday. And I wanted something that wasn't too churchy for the people who get freaked out by the churchy. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful to be in an environment where I'm free to talk about anything I want, to say my religion is love, to talk about Jesus, Buddha, how much I love Ganesh. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. It's nice to see that kind of freedom and inspire that freedom in others.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm so happy to have learned about it too, so I can spread the word. Because I do have friends that are sort of homeless, wanting, they're Christian and suddenly they realize their church isn't quite as accepting as they had thought. So how did you go from, I have a curiosity about these spiritual things, to my cat is scratching himself and shaking.
And mine's talking. I'm sorry. It's so cliched on a magic show that the cat is talking, but I seem like the most cliched witch ever now, but she can't help herself. She's a Scorpio, so forgive her.
Oh, I forgive all cats for any transgression. So yeah, how did you go from kind of having that curiosity to
excuse me,
becoming aware of your, I know that we all have intuition. We all are capable of tapping into psychic and mediumship gifts. I know, and you can sort of start wherever you want. I did listen to one of your radio shows where you mentioned that you had had an accident. And I don't know if that was something that,
sure,
if that was the door opening or if that had happened already. And this was just sort of a second part of that. So I'd love to hear from you what your experience is.
I'm going to take a minute and rival your glorious microphone with my gigantic water jug.
Oh yeah, please.
I would say that journey when I was 19 of realizing I didn't want to grow up and become the evangelical that so many of my friends from school did started a path of thinking that, and the obsession with Abraham Lincoln, and really becoming a reincarnationist. And then my mother coming out as a psychic medium that same year. And we kind of spending a lot of our time in everything from Irish festivals to Renaissance fairs to crystal bookshops. Really, I think that sort of started this path of watching her gifts grow. And I remember I used to always say, because it was hard for her. She was such an empath. It was hard for her to leave the house. And my joke was always, thank God I don't have my mother's gifts. They're amazing, but I don't want them. And then somebody ran me off the 405 freeway and I had a near-death experience and I came back from it different. And I don't know at the time I would have told you I had gifts, because they certainly weren't what I thought my mother's gifts were. But I started seeing things out of the corner of my eyes. And once you go home and come back, you can't forget what you saw at home. And I think growing up as an actor, I was taught it was supposed to be about my path and my journey and where I was going. And I was on my way to USC to study screenwriting and acting. And when the accident happened, and it's like my life was a line. Everything was like a line. And then after the accident, everything was a circle. And I started thinking about how I could help others and how I could incorporate what I was doing. I had to take a break from school because I suffered a closed head injury. So I started with some of the characters I had done in college that I'd put on video, sending out resumes with bits and pieces of that. And I wound up doing people's public access shows. And from that, I started my own. I started bringing all my friends in as cast members. I never cough. I have no idea why I'm coughing. It must be because magic is real. And
it must be one of my loved ones. I actually, that's giving you that symptom. I hope not.
No, gosh, I hope not too. I never cough. I never cough on camera. That's very strange for me. So it's a whole thing with the nose and everything, very unlike me. Anyway, so I just started thinking about how I could help others and how I could help my friends and how we could all do it together. And it just became a very different thing. You know, I was an actor in high school and college who never student directed, was not interested in writing, would never produce anything. I wanted to be in it. And suddenly I was all about being a producer and being a writer. And it was like I just kind of came back a little different.
Right. Yeah. So you were thinking of it more, not, it wasn't as much me centered as working as a team, being of service in that way. Now, would you
Yeah.
mind sharing, what did you see when you went home? And I love that you phrased it that way. What was your experience like after the impact, if you
So
remember?
I was on the freeway. I had just closed escrow on my house, which will be 30 years next week. And I was driving to Newport Beach. I worked for a movie theater company in Newport Beach, and I was on my way there. First day of work after closing escrow. Day after St. Patrick's Day. Should not happen to an Irishman. And there was a guy on the freeway. He was in the left lane. I was in the right lane. He realized he'd missed the exit and he cut like this. And I swerved to avoid him and went headlong into the sound wall.
Wow.
And I remember as I was heading towards that wall at 70 miles an hour, thinking to myself, this is it. I'm dead. I'm a quadriplegic. I'm going to talk by puffing on a straw. This is the end of my life as I know it, which was true, but not in the way I thought. So in the truth, I bounced off the wall and my car was spinning. But in my consciousness, I went through the wall and I was in the car and it was all white. And I looked over and there was this man sitting next to me. And he had kind of oatmeal colored pants, like a yoga outfit, I guess we'd say now. Excuse me. Again, this has never happened to me in my life. You got a relative with a cough.
I do, actually. That's why I was like, I'm sorry about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So sitting next to me is this man with a beard that I immediately thought, is that Jesus? No, Jesus would never come for me. That kid, because I was in this phase at that time. I would never say God. I would only say universe. No, I'm not a Christian. I mean, I was all like that at the time. So here's this guy. He's got a beard, dark hair. He's sitting in the car, kind of just casually sitting in the passenger seat. And I said, what are you doing in my car? He said, I am just here to make sure you get across okay. And then I heard a voice say, not sure if it was his or someone else's, it's completely up to you. You can stay or you can go back. It's your decision. And I immediately said, oh my God, I have to go back because there's so many things I want to do for the world, right? Because I was going to be a great actress and move the world with my acting. And then the next thing I know, I was sucked back in the car and it was spinning. And it was spinning and it wouldn't stop spinning. It gave me a nice inner ear concussion. So no more roller coasters for me. And I remember my mom telling me when I was little, growing up in Connecticut, that if you turned into the skid, the car would stop. And I thought, that's the dumbest thing ever. And I did, and it stopped. And people were whizzing by me because I was blocking the exit. And I got out of the car and I was seemingly unharmed. And, I don't like to wear shoes when I drive. I grew up at the beach. I had shorts on and a t-shirt, no bra, no underwear. I was going to go to my mom's house and change and go to work. And I'm kind of standing there on the freeway. People probably thought I was a crazy person. And people kept saying, I don't understand. You should be dead. I don't understand. I got out of the car and I had a mid-size BMW, 5 Series BMW. Literally the whole front end was gone. Like the windshield was the front. I don't have any idea what happened, but I know a lot of people kept telling me I should be dead, and tow truck drivers and police officers. And I seemingly didn't have a scratch on me. Now, later that night, the neck started. And then a couple of months later, the head injury started and the ear thing started. So there definitely was damage, but how I probably should have looked in that car. I just believe that it was all divine intervention.
Yeah.
And then I got back to my townhome, stayed with my mom for about a week, and I didn't go to work. And I came home and I started seeing these tall black figures out of the corners of my eyes and my peripheral vision. And I called the doctor because I didn't know what to do. And I said, I'm seeing these tall black figures. And they said, well, we do have you on Soma, which was true. They did have me on Soma, but I have never seen those figures ever, except in my neighborhood. And I still see them sometimes, but I don't see them anywhere else I go. Wow. Even though I've taken Soma many different places for my neck in my 20s. So I think I just opened up to something. Right now, I'm opened up to this very strange thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now uh, obviously you had some little issues, some little funny eye things. When did you start to realize that there was had been a spiritual shift, that something else was happening other than that?
I don't know. I just kept thinking it was the accident.
Yeah.
I lost my two best friends at the time. I lost my boyfriend. It was like everybody didn't like the new me. Everybody liked that sort of type A, take charge, headstrong Aries. Nobody knew what to do with airy fairy me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very unhappy. It was a very hard time. And I think that's really when I was opening up as an empath. I mean, I think I always was empathic, but I think that's when I was really opening up as an empath, sort of the first phase of my ascension, or maybe the second phase. I think the first phase was the first time I really stepped on the stage and realized I was an artist, because that was always a very spiritual thing for me. It's why I never started drinking, why I never did a drug, why I never smoked a cigarette, because there was such a spirituality around being on stage for me that I didn't ever want to betray spirit's trust in me by putting a bunch of stuff in my body that didn't belong there. But really, the second phase of it was this accident. And I think I was really opening up as an empath. And I think part of why I was so unhappy was I was feeling everybody's stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I was living in a townhome complex with a lot of people around me. And I think I was just picking up on everybody's everything.
Yeah.
And, I did what you do when you're going through a crisis like that. I got a cat because cats make everything better. Cats can fix all spiritual crisis. But yeah, I don't think I even knew at the time what that was. I just knew I was changing and I was different, and people could feel that I was different. And it was a hard time. And I was in a lawsuit for the accident, and that is a huge spiritual strain on anyone. And it was a very, I was in a new place, out of the house for the first time, out of my parents' house. It was a weird time, but I think a lot of the anguish of that was opening up as an empath, and I didn't think about that till years later.
Right. And what would you say your friends were noticing specifically from their vantage point, that was different about you?
I think that I was very woo woo, and I was very very much about giving to everyone, more worried about others than me, less driven in a different way.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like I sat around and did nothing. I started a television show
Mm-hmm.
on cable access that then wound up on like 50 affiliates and became very successful and launched my whole career. I became Sheena Metal,
Mm-hmm.
but um, but I think they saw the difference in me.
So they started to notice that you were becoming,
Yeah,
maybe more introspective, more, outside of yourself, which is
yeah,
actually a beautiful thing. Um, but you probably, that some of what they liked about you, which is probably, I can tell, from your personality, that you are a performer and you're fun, and it's
yeah,
like, oh, she's the fun person, and
yeah.
I'm sure that you still were fun. But what was it that actually either helped you understand that you were a medium, or did you do what I did, which is say, I think I'm going to use these gifts and train to be a medium?
Oh no, I never did that.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't want mom's gifts.
Yeah.
To me, mom's gifts represented a life of torment.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. I didn't want that responsibility. And my mom was a work with emotionally disturbed kids, was a teacher and a therapist of sorts. My grandmother was a psychologist. I definitely ran away from the family business. I didn't want anything to do with that. I wanted to be free of people's problems and
Mhm.
just move people through art instead of through sitting in a chair listening to people's problems, which made me laugh uproariously when I accidentally became a talk radio host, because you basically sit in a chair and you listen to people's stories, and it's pretty much the same even kind of chair. So it's just therapy with a microphone. But uh so I would never even have thought that that was happening or wanted the gifts. I don't think I really understood I had the gifts until I began working at the last radio place I worked before Live Paranormal. And I was doing, for the first time in my life, because when I worked on the Howard Stern affiliate, it was a lot of phone calls. And now looking back at that, wow, people would call up, tell me their problem. I would think about it, suss them up in one line, say something obnoxious, hang up on them, and go to the next one. And it got to the point after doing that night after night after night that I could be in a coffee shop and my friends would laugh, like, point out the ones that are cheating on their partners, point out the ones that are secretly gay. And because I could feel people. But even then, I didn't know that I had her gift. This is how far in the psychic, how deep in the psychic closet I was. But when I started working at LA Talk Radio and I was interviewing people, I would finish with interviews and people would say, like, how did you do that? And I would say, how did I do what? We just did an interview. No, 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 no. That was not just an interview. And I realized I had this skill for seeing into people and pulling things out of them. But even then, I don't know that I thought that was what it was until I started having a lot of psychic mediums on the show. And they were literally yanking me out of the closet. And at one point, they all just started talking about it on the air and just making me talk about it. And then I realized, then I looked back over my life and I went, oh no, yeah, this and this and that. And this is why I can do this. And when I'm on stage doing comedy, it's why I can nail the hecklers. I mean, it's all intuition. It's all intuitive gifts. But I didn't think about it like that. Was there like a little cat tail right there? I thought, does she have another microphone that wags?
Yeah, that was my Siamese. That was her little Siamese tail wagging.
She's amazing.
She's so cute.
I think everything I say ever should have a cat wag afterwards.
Yeah, I do too.
That's how you know it's true.
That's
exactly.
Right. And so, well, what was there sort of, so then you realized this, how did you take that knowledge of, I mean, because I too have always been the kind of person that I can open people up and I've always just attributed that to, well, I'm an open book, so they feel safe being an open book with me.
Sure.
And I think it's really interesting that you point out, that that's what intuition is being able to sort of read the room and know how to relate with different kinds of people and kind of understand what's going on with them. I mean, I'll tell you, I made the best Lyft driver. It was like taxi cab confessions every single day.
Yes.
I think you're that way too, where you can put people at ease. But at what point did you say, oh my gosh, I'm a medium? I mean, I know that you said people started to say it to you, which is how I discovered it too, because mediums kept telling me, do you know that you're a medium? Because you're a medium. And what was it that kind of took it to the next level?
I would say probably around 2014. I got involved in the paranormal community around 2009, 2010, late 2009, early 2010. And I thought, because I grew up in a very active haunted house, that I just could feel spirits in houses because they knew who I was and I knew who they were from growing up in that house. But then the friends on the air, harassing me and pulling me out of the closet. And I think it was about 2014 where I finally said, okay, if you're going to talk about it on the air, I will admit to it. And I started working for a psychic collective that some folks I knew ran. And the first time the phone rang and I picked it up, I thought, I'm not going to know what to say to this person.
Yeah.
And then it was the easiest thing I'd ever done. And I loved the idea of being in service. To this day, I take clients at 6 a.m, 3 a.m, like whenever, wherever, because I try to make myself available as much as I can for when people need me. And I don't know, it was the easiest thing in my life. And I thought it was going to be the hardest. I thought everybody in the entertainment community would be like, get out. Mm-hmm. But everybody was so embracing and so wonderful. And I realize now it's probably what I always should have done with my life, although I don't believe in regrets and I don't have any. But I think it always was who I was, hence the comment about my underwear being inside out. It's just that I used to bury it in my art. Mm-hmm. Now I live out loud as a psychic medium, and my artistic side is sort of what's also inside of there. I just kind of flip them upside down, right?
Yeah.
Like the upside down is where I live now.
Yeah.
But it took my mom dying for me to really make that change. And tomorrow is her 5-year death anniversary. And I will try not to cry in saying that. And after she died, I felt this very strong sense of purpose with her kind of guiding me from spirit, that it was time for me to do something for the world to honor her. So I didn't know what that was. And her birthday was the day of the election results in 2016. And it was the year after she died. Well, the same year, that same year.
Mhm.
And I was planning a huge memorial for her. She didn't want a funeral, so I was going to throw a big party for her. I was broadcasting my daily show from the Hollywood Improv, and I was going to do a party for her. And the election happened, and everybody on Facebook was screaming at everybody.
Mhm.
And people were not coming to her last minute, not coming to her memorial
Wow.
because I don't like Democrats. I don't like Republicans. So-and-so is going to be there. This person, really?
Oh boy.
And so I didn't know what to do. I had a brief moment where I thought, that screw it, I'm moving to Ireland.
Yeah.
And then I was walking to the car to go to her house, to clean out her house, that I didn't want to do. And I made myself go. And I was literally had opened the door and was sliding into the driver's seat. And Spirit said, this is what you do now. It's a movement of peace, love, kindness, and unity to carry on Mom's spiritual teachings, her humane teachings. And it's called, I am raising the vibration of the nation and the world. Go get a URL right now, go. So I drove to a Starbucks on the way between my house and my mom's. And I got online and got the URL, and it was available. And I started a Facebook group that night, a Facebook page. Just started putting up memes. I had no idea what I was doing. And people just started following me. And that summer, I had gathered about 20,000 people. I didn't know what to do with it. And I'd started a radio show specifically for that I now have at Live Paranormal that I've had since 2017. And I was in a Walmart parking lot, again in Huntington Beach, working on Mom's house. And I was getting out of the car to go into the Walmart. This is a very glamorous story about Walmart. And Spirit said, wait. And I stopped. And they said, get something to write with. And I always keep like Starbucks napkins and my, for somebody who has never drank a cup of coffee, this is a whole Starbucks story every time. Pulled out the piece of paper and a pen. And they said, here's the next thing. You're going to make the movement a nonprofit. You're going to get ordained, and you're going to open your spiritual practice. And the next year of my life was those things just in synchronicity happening, boom, 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 completely effortlessly.
Wow. And I know, when you're hearing this from Spirit, it's a thought. A lot of people ask, well, when you say you hear from Spirit, what does that feel like to you? How do you
Yeah.
know it's Spirit? How do you know it's? And I feel that there's so many different interesting answers to this, and that's why I'm asking you, not because, not saying, oh well, how do you know it was Spirit? I mean, we know it was Spirit, but I know that people always want to know, how do you know it's from Spirit versus your own thought?
For me, I hear it in my head and I feel it in my solar plexus at the same time. And it's a very calm, soothing voice that sounds like a male voice and a female voice put together in one voice. So that when I really think about it, I can't tell what it is or how many it is.
Yeah.
But at the time, it's very much a singular energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say in my sermons, when God speaks, the answer is yes. And the reason is because. And I really believe that. And the more in service I get, the more I believe that. I don't have any expectations for my life anymore, except that whatever Spirit says I'm doing next is what I'm doing next.
Yeah.
And for some people, that seems like a terrifying way to live. And my old pre-accident headstrong type A Aries is, secretly needs a big swig of milk of magnesia right now. But the truth is, I have never been more secure or felt more comforted or more in control as since I released and completely let the control go. So now Spirit talks all the time. and I just listen. And and when people ask me questions, I just answer them. And it's such an effortless thing. And it was a lot of it was that conversation, because when they told me to start the movement, my mom believed that peace, love, kindness, and unity, which are our cornerstone words for raisingthevibration.org, that was really what humanity was lacking. And I believe that. And when they asked me to form the movement, I felt like it was destiny for me. I felt like it was them honoring my mother, who was already there, and telling them, hey, what a great idea. But when they told me the three crazy things, right? Nonprofit, minister, spiritual practice. And I thought, how in the world am I going to do any of this? So 2 weeks later, I'm broadcasting again from the Improv for my 20-something radio anniversary, whatever one it would have been, like 23rd. And afterwards, I'm hanging out with some friends at a table outside in the courtyard. And I knew I had a friend who ran a nonprofit. And I said to her, I had this crazy download from Spirit. I got to start a nonprofit. So you probably get a crazy phone call from me. And I was on a board of directors for a cultural foundation in Moreno Valley, which sounds like an oxymoron, but isn't. I guess you have to live in LA to get that joke. And my friend who ran it had brought another board member who was there with his family. And this guy I didn't know, this beautiful Irishman, said to me, are you, oh, and then I made a joke about having to get ordained, and everybody at the table laughed because everybody knows me. And he said, I'm the president of American Trinity University, and I'm happy to put you through the ordination process at our university. And also kind of, as a side job, I set up nonprofits for people. And if what you're talking about is what you talked about from the stage at the Improv to honor your mom, I will gratis help you set up this nonprofit. And that was it. 2 down right there.
And that's how it happens.
And that's how it happened. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like that jump and the net will appear, but it's more so when you listen to Spirit. I've gotten to that place too. I heard you say in one of your shows, you said, oh, I used to be so anxious and I used to run on anxiety. So did I. I
Yeah.
mean, I I had debilitating anxiety for most of
Me
my
too.
life.
Me too.
And yeah, and we're the creative types, and I think that's because we have so much going on in our brains, and we feel so much, which is a beautiful thing, but it can be crippling when it comes to anxiety. But
Yes.
it is, I think too, that just like you, I love that what you just said is that it's really counterintuitive, but when you just let go and ride the wave, and when you have that faith, when you trust Spirit and you say, I don't know, I'm giving it up to you, God,
Right.
Spirit, whatever your God of your understanding is, things start to flow. And I came about that by being in a 12-step program, which I've talked about, and learning that let go and let God
Right.
thing, which I would have rolled my eyes at years ago. I mean, group
Right.
anything was like, oh, please, holding
Yep.
hands and chant. No, like, that's just not my thing. But once I learned that, well, okay, even if you don't at the time, don't believe in God, act as if. What
Right.
if God is handling it all? And all you have to do is just show up and
Yeah.
forward momentum and just follow the path. I can't tell you how much easier life is. It's so much more in the flow. And my anxiety is like 75% less.
Yeah.
Unless there's
Yeah.
something extremely stressful happening, I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. It'll work out. I mean, so,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean we're exempt from anxiety when it's
Oh no, I
warranted.
still
But
have it.
yeah,
No.
me too.
Yeah.
But it's
Way
I love
better,
that.
but I still have it.
Yeah, me too. I love that you said that though, because I think that's one of the beautiful things about opening yourself up to Spirit and realizing that this is all life's, this is earth school that we're in. And it's
Right. Soul
these
school.
things. Yeah. If it didn't happen, what would we learn? If it was all easy and we were all just floating around on yachts, where's the lesson in that? We could just stay up in heaven if that's if that's it. And I actually wanted to backtrack just a bit because you said, well, you started kind of just doing mediumship I think on the air. Did I
Yeah.
understand that
Oh
correctly?
yeah.
So
Sure. Yeah, that's me.
do you have a memory of, as you said, you're like, what am I going to say? And I've done that in practice readings too, where I'm like, I don't know what's about to come out of my mouth right now. And then you find out that it's validated. Do you remember either a specific reading or just that the first few times you did it, what was it like for you? How were you receiving information? How were you able to interpret it organically without, without having taken a class or learned what to look out for? How did you know how were you receiving the information, I suppose is my question.
It was before I actually I came out of the closet, started working as a medium. It was when I still thought I was just a talk radio host. And I was interviewing a well-known guy who's been a friend for a very long time. And his publicist called me and said, by the way, it's not public knowledge. He's going through a really bad divorce. He will not talk about it. Don't ask him about it. Don't mention it. It's not going to happen. I'm sure you've read about it. I'm thinking, like, I got time to sit around and, read every gossip rag for who's getting divorced. I can't even keep track of who I know in my life's getting divorced. But the whole time I kept thinking, he's going to talk about this divorce. Should I stop it when he starts? Should I not say anything? And then Spirit was kind of like, look, he wants to come on here and talk about his divorce, and this is cathartic for him. Let him do it. So she calls me right before the interview. Just a reminder, do not talk about his divorce. He does not want to be asked questions about his divorce. Okay. So he comes in to talk about this album he's got. And we got the CD, and we played it before, and he's been in, as I said, many times. And all of a sudden on the air, he says, I'm going through this really bad divorce. And he just opens up about the whole thing. So I could tell when I interviewed people what they wanted to talk about, what they didn't want to talk about. It was like I would always say I could hear their voices here, but I could also hear their voices here. Mm-hmm. And it was like two conversations going at the same time. So when I started actually doing psychic and mediumship readings on the air, where that's what I was calling it, if I started to get funky or nervous or weird, or that thing we do where we let our little monkey brain get in the way, I would just remember that it was just like interviewing people. Mm-hmm. You just tap into them with your solar plexus and your gut, and you just let them talk to you. Mm-hmm. So that's the same thing. I mean, when I'm reading for clients, they're telling me all kinds of stuff with their guts that they're not telling me with their mouths. And I just listen. Mm-hmm. And then I have to discern what of that do they want me to, what of that needs to be addressed out loud, and what of it do I let go? Because the truth is, when you do a reading, a psychic reading or a mediumship reading, yes, you're getting messages from spirit and or getting messages from spirits, but a lot of what you're getting is also from your client. Mm-hmm. Because they have a lot of the answers inside of them. Yeah. They just don't consciously know that. Mm-hmm. So they're unconsciously telling you a lot of stuff they're not consciously telling you. Right. So I think you just listen. You have to just listen. It's like my job as a professional listener. And now I, for real, sit on a couch and listen to people's problems, even without a microphone. Now I've officially gone back to the family business, just in this crazy woo-woo kind of way. But I now see how my mom, even when she was working in the psychological, the education world, she was knowingly or unknowingly using her psychic gifts to do that. Right. And she was just like that. My mom was magic. Like, she was magic. When we moved to California, we had a pool for the first time. Very exciting. And I would invite all my friends over to play in the pool. And I would be swimming around and like the strange Atlantean that I am. And I would suddenly notice I was in the pool all by myself. And I would look in the window, in the sliding glass door, and everybody would be sitting around my mom's easy chair. It looked like this weird highlights magazine that I would see in Sunday school with all the kids sitting around Jesus, just asking her questions. Where should I go to college? Should I break up with my boyfriend? What kind of car should I get? And she just casually kind of sitting there, touching everybody. And here you know what I mean? Yeah. And my mom had a hard life. Like, she was not a squishy person. She was a Scorpio. She was Irish. She grew up in a very impoverished area. Then she was thrown in the system for 7 years, then adopted by people who threw her in boarding school, and she never saw them. Like, she was not the lovey, squishy person that I am with strangers. Mm-hmm. But man, people would get around her, and it was like all their problems would just be fixed, like just magically. Wow. And I always used to say, before I knew I had her gifts, that if I inherited a little bit of her humanity and a little bit of her humility,
Mm-hmm.
then I became the best person I could be. It never occurred to me I would inherit her gifts. I
Yeah.
would have my own gifts that I inherited in a lineage way, but then that after she died, she would download her gifts to me and I would get all the gifts, which is, scarier than hell.
Mhm.
But I just hope every day I do her proud. And I hope every day I take everything that she gave me and I do something good with it. Because man, when people were waiting in line for other things, I was waiting in line for moms first in line and I lucked out. And
Wow.
I will never forget how lucky I was and still am for having been raised by such a beautiful person who had every excuse in her life to become ugly
Mhm.
because of things that happened to her and everything you can think of in the whole world that can happen to anybody, except maybe being in like a prison camp, which an
Yeah.
orphanage during the Depression in Kentucky kind of was. Everything you can imagine happened to her, but she just refused to let it make her dark and refused to let it make her hard. And I think there is such a lesson in that for all of us, you know?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And I think,
And now I'm crying, even
no,
though
I
I said
know
I
it's,
wasn't gonna. And here we go.
let it
Yeah, it's hard.
go. Let it
It's
go.
hard. Even when it's not her death anniversary, I cry. It's just, I'm overwhelmed by how lucky I am
Right. I mean, and
to
she
have.
sounds like such a special person.
Oh,
And it also, it's really is interesting to me that she was such a spiritual person. And it sounds like that's kind of probably gave her a lot of strength and
yeah,
gave her that faith that of knowing that we are the light, that even though
absolutely.
dark things happen here, it feels like she really stayed connected with that light, which is so incredible and difficult to do when you've been through trauma. And yet so many mediums are trauma survivors. And we've
Yes,
spoken about that on this show before about how the brain changes. So if you endure trauma, your the fear center of your amygdala tends to be enlarged, which is why
sure,
some people develop PTSD, some borderline, some don't, but they still have the part of their brain that's a light switched on because they have to sort of
sure.
scan for danger. And when that light is turned on, or that signal is turned on, it can also let in a lot of spiritual information as well,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
now it's like you have an extra antenna. A, for danger, which is not the pleasant part because it can backfire, but B, for being able to see beyond the veil
Right,
in a sense. So,
right.
do
Well,
you?
don't you think that antenna for danger
Yeah.
is kind of what causes anxiety a lot of the time?
Yes.
Because other people don't think about that kind of stuff. Other people don't think if I get in an elevator, what if it stops and no one ever finds me? They just blindly get in that elevator every day and they never give a
Right.
thought to it. So I think that third antenna for danger, that's such a beautiful way you put that. I think that's also what causes the anxiety. And I just want to say, if I do have a third antenna, I want it to look like your cat's tail.
Oh.
Can it, I want it to look like that, black and like that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, I also think I was reading the book The Highly Sensitive Person,
Sure.
which is wonderful for all empaths, and really, really just was such an awakening for me to go, oh my gosh, this is why my psychologist when I was 2 thought I was autistic. It's like told my mom that I was probably autistic, because I just sensory overload. But it's also I read that it's not actually a disorder, which it's a we're 15% of the population is an HSP, and which we may call an empath, a highly sensitive person. Not that all HSP empaths are HSPs. I think we're sort of the extreme end of it. We were the part of the group in the herd that looked out for danger. So some of the herd
Right.
was meant to hunt and gather, and the others of us were the ones that were meant to be the watchers. And so biologically, it makes sense that we would be the ones that we perceive were more anxious. We get anxious about
Sure.
every little thing,
We're
just
the
as a
one meerkat, right? We're the meerkat
yeah,
that stands up outside of the hole.
that's right. And because of that, that's why so many of us are intuitive. We're all able to be intuitive,
Yeah,
but we more than most will notice it before other people will, or will be able
absolutely.
to. We just feel so much. every,
Yeah.
we're taking in every little detail to the point where we get exhausted easily. And we are drained easily, but it's actually such a gift because then we can also perceive things that most people don't even notice. Like you said, they just get on the elevator.
Right.
And would you have described, I know, even though I know that you're very outgoing, as a child, would you describe yourself as an HSP empath? And was that sort of gregariousness that led you to performing, was that more of a defense, or was that just, or were you just very confident and open,
Oh,
and
God,
also
no.
empathic?
I'm a horrible introvert. I've loved the COVID year because I don't have to see anybody. I'm a complete introvert.
Yeah.
I I I've learned to be an extrovert because it was good for my artistic career,
Hmm.
and then because it's good for my service. I can reach more people if I'm engaging. And I think just naturally, I'm an Irishman. I was raised by a Scorpio, they're charming as hell. I'm an Aries. We naturally are leaders and very gregarious, but I was always a hell of a lot of fun in a small group. But it took me a long time to be good with people in large groups. And the thing about acting was I always felt that there were stories to be told. And I think as a kid, we moved around a lot. And my dad got transferred, so we moved from state to state. And we didn't really have family. My mother was not really close to her adopted or her birth family. My father didn't really like his family, or honestly, Shannon didn't really like anybody, including us. So both my parents were very quiet. They were not close with each other. And so what I loved was stories. And my mom loved stories. Like, my mom was the kind of person, you'd get up at 4 a.m. and she'd be sitting in the complete dark with one light reading a book. Like, she loved television, and she started taking me to movies when I was maybe a year and a half, 2 years old. I think I was probably 2 when I went to my first Broadway musical. So I thought that stories were healing because stories had healed me. So when I learned that I had an ability to be an actor and be halfway decent at it, I loved the idea that I could heal people through storytelling. And that's why I guess it was always so spiritual for me. It was never about showing off
Yeah.
or being in the limelight. I usually played the crazy old ladies. You couldn't even recognize me, or the nutty people, or men. I played all kinds of crazy stuff. I wasn't there to be glamorous. For me, it was service.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I would have used that word at the time, but it was service. And then because I didn't grow up with a lot of family or relatives, or any really, by not a lot, I mean none. I loved being in plays because I loved the community aspect. I still love community. I love ensemble. I'm always trying to bring people together to do things in groups. It's my favorite part about being a minister.
Mm-hmm.
Is I love the feeling of bringing everybody together, even now during the quarantine where it's bringing everybody together virtually. I still love it. I think I hate the idea of people being lonely. I did late night radio for many years when I was on the Stern station. And the thing I loved about it was that there were people up, during that third shift, lonely, and listening to the was what got them by. I hate the thought that I always worked holidays. They thought I was crazy because I insisted on working Christmas and Thanksgiving. My mom was like, well, hold the turkey, work. Because there were people that needed to hear a live voice on Christmas Eve in the middle of the night. And I was willing to sacrifice a holiday to be that person. So, but I didn't think any of that. I would never have used the word service. To me, it was just what you should do, And even as a talk radio host, I don't think I ever thought about that. But now, as I said, looking back over my life, it's even before the accident, it's all been about service.
Right.
And so that's what I loved about acting. It's what I loved about radio. It's what I loved about everything. I mean, I'm on camera because I have to be, because I do better if people see me. When I do my web series for Live Paranormal, people want to see my face. I learned from doing that I got twice as many views the closer the camera was to my face.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was at my old radio place and they would broadcast, it was sort of like from my waist up, and you saw me kind of at a distance. You mostly saw a studio. I learned the minute I turned the camera this close on me, my views would double or triple, because people want to look in your eyes and they want to see your face. So I've learned how to not be shy about stuff. because it's what other people need.
Yeah.
And I'm just not a show. I'd probably be a lot more famous and a lot more rich if I was a show-offy person, but I'm just not. I'm terribly shy.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm still getting used to, you know?
Yeah, a lot of actors actually surprisingly are. And I think, and yeah, I mean, that's why I'm a voice actor. I never wanted to be on camera,
Sure.
but I think doing this, I was going to do this as a podcast originally. And apart from the fact that I just didn't feel like editing all the audio stuff, because I do that every day for work, as a voice actor, I just thought, I think there is something like even reading listening to the moth stories. I like to watch them on YouTube. I like to see the gestures. I like to see
Yeah.
the connection and to feel the connection, and it just
Yes.
helps people get to know all of you. It doesn't, it's not about vanity but by any stretch of the imagination. And I know that so you provide both psychic readings, you provide mediumship
Yeah.
readings.
Mhm.
I'm assuming you do one-on-ones off air as well, or are you sort of
Oh
just
yeah.
now? Yeah, you do.
Oh yeah.
You
I
take
do
clients.
most of my work. Most of my work is private and
Yeah.
nobody knows anything about it. It's so funny. My life has been public and everybody knew everything I did. Now,
Yeah.
most of my work, nobody ever sees. I do a lot of energetic cleanses and balances. I probably do 5 of those a week at least. I do a lot of house clearings for other paranormal survivors. I work with animals, couples, groups. When we had a world that we went in, I did a lot of parties and events, and now I do everything online. I teach webinars, and I cleanse and bless and charge and sell crystals for folks. My mom was a rock hound, so I kind of inherited that. I have a friend who calls himself a stoner. I kind of like that. I'm a stoner, but not like you would think. So
Yeah.
I like to foster the rocks and wander around with them in my pockets before I get them to people. And yeah, most of that stuff you only know about if you watch something I'm doing or you watch a great interview like this, because it's all very, very personal and very quiet.
Yeah, I didn't even know that before I found you on Instagram, and found you just by we have mutual
Nice.
followers, and you just popped up in my feed, and I knew you as a medium. I didn't know that you were a host.
Yeah.
I just liked your Instagram stories. I like your little your posts. I liked seeing your bird, and that sort
Yeah.
of thing.
My
And
bird's amazing.
I've always wanted a bird, but I've
Oh,
got 2 of these
this
cats over
little
here.
this little guy. I carry he's molting right now, and he came and gave me this feather. It's about that big. It's like the size of a pill. And
Oh,
he was on my shoulder and he walked over and he handed it to me from his beak. And I carry it in my wallet like he's my boyfriend who's at war.
and
I
awesome.
can't, I love that little man. We know each other from so many lives. And he's not even my bird. He's my girlfriend's bird. But from the
Really?
first time I met him, he is my bird.
He
Yeah,
is your bird. Do you do animal communication?
I do. Yeah, I
When
do.
you since we haven't actually talked about that on this show, what does animal communication entail? Get it? Entail.
Oh, nice. Nice.
um, how is it different from connecting with a human spirit?
It's easier
Yeah.
because people get in their own way and animals want to tell you everything and they want to tell you what they want to eat. So Molly, my cat, mostly talks about spiritual stuff. Sometimes she talks about getting older and her body hurting and unhappiness, and I'm not here with her all the time. But mostly she talks about emotions and spiritual stuff. So my girlfriend has 2 dogs. We have a Chorky, a a diaper wearing, one-eyed elderly Chorky who's a hoot and a half, and then a big kind of a pit shepherd chow mix. And it's funny because they talk a lot about food. And how it's become explained to me is that as they're at the window and other dogs are walking by on the sidewalk being walked, the dogs talk to them about, like, hey, have you ever had a sausage? Like, they talk about food and they become very intrigued with foods they've never had. And so my girlfriend's daughter is a brilliant budding light worker in her own respect. She's going to be 18 in a couple months. And she's always asking me for advice and asking me psychic questions. And so she asked me, like, what do the dogs want for Christmas? So I asked them, and one of them, and I'm probably going to get this wrong because once it's said to me, it leaves. The big girl, she's obsessed with my girlfriend. She wanted a full body hug / nap. only with my girlfriend. She wanted, which is lovely, and everybody should want that. I'm very lucky. I
Yeah.
get that a lot. She wanted to go to the beach with her and walk on the beach. And she wanted a sausage because a dog had told her she should have sausage. So for Christmas morning, they're not a sausage family. Christmas morning, I made sausage so she could have her sausage. And the little guy wanted me to give him a full body massage, which is very strange. And he wanted a chicken and rice. And God, he wanted something else, but I don't remember what it is. But they kind of gave their Christmas list, but it was all these really odd things. And I think it's interesting how dogs are very interested in finding out about foods they've never had.
Yeah. And how do you receive the information from them? I'm assuming it's the same way that we receive
Yeah,
information from spirit.
exactly. You get all the solar plexus and none of this.
Right.
It all just comes out of their guts. And it's
Yeah.
very stream of consciousness. And it's not, they don't worry when they say it. They don't think, oh, what is somebody going to think if I say I want a hot dog? They just like, I like hot dogs. I should
Yeah.
have hot dogs. Okay. And they talk a lot about hot dogs. I don't know what it is about hot dogs, but maybe just because it's something we tend to throw to dogs, or because it's kind of crap food. So it's delicious, like all food that's bad for you. But yeah, they're fascinated with strange things that neighborhood dogs have told them about. And they don't know what it is or what it's like, but they've heard it's good. And I think that sort of inspires this whole stream of consciousness that we don't really have, right? About animals not just being reactors, but actually being ponderers. Because we have this false notion, right, that animals are only, animal instinct, right? I smell food, I want food. We don't think of them as really like sitting around thinking about things, but they really do. They think, and they have all the same weird questions that we do about everything, except not as much of the existential crisis, because they're a lot better with that. That seems to be more of a human thing. They have it all figured out a lot better.
Yeah. And from all of the readings that you've done and all of the spiritual experiences that you've had, what do you think is going on the other side? What do you think happens to us?
Oh God.
And I know it's a big question, but how do you sort of see it structured? Because I think none of us really exactly know, but we have an idea of what the, what sort of the order of things is over there. But I always love to hear people's perspectives on that.
Well, to me, it's a very busy place, but we're energy and not embodied.
Yeah.
So we sort of look like energy. And I think we have a very specific energetic signature there that we always go back to, the way we quote unquote look, the way we feel. That's the same after each life. I mean, when we go back there, that's the real us. I mean, being incarnate is like playing a role. When you go home, that's who you really are when you take the costume off. And everybody has a job. Everybody has something that they do at home that they sort of pick up when they go home. Just like when you're in college and you go home for the summer and you go back and work at the same movie theater that you worked at every summer. It's the same thing. That's our kind of job that waits for us at home. I've always been fascinated by this idea that home is like we sit on a cloud and do nothing, and cherubs come by and they play tiny harps, and God comes and points a finger at us and tells us why we're bad. I mean, it's nothing like that. It's about enlightenment, ascension, bringing more souls up, right? Going back in and trying it again so you can ascend some more, so you can eventually become part of the collective unconscious that is the universe, that is the God source energy. Aside from that, I have no idea.
Yeah. I don't either. Every day my theories change, especially speaking with all these different people on this.
Sure.
I go from going, oh, there's no hell, or there's no bad, it's just all good,
no,
to going, oh no, now there are different levels of, going over to the other side after you've sort of made poor choices or had lived in the darkness. You kind of take the darkness with you, and then it'll be, I don't think that dark spirits are trying to come through, but now I see evidence of that too, so that they can sometimes trick you when you're trying to communicate with the other side. And I don't know, I think
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, darkness is a real thing.
Yeah. I know
a lot of my new age friends do not agree. Yep. And I always say it must be lovely to live in Candyland.
Yep.
But darkness is a for real thing. And I have a whole different theory that they go to their place and we go to ours. And I don't think it's the same place, which is probably where the heaven and hell analogy came from. In the same way that the Christians had it right with let go, let God. They had it right with when God closes the door, he opens a window. They're all right, but they're just different.
Right.
And I do believe they go to a different place that they came from, and they go back there. A lot of dark souls. And then most people just sit on the fence and they're not sure what they are from minute to minute, and they make that decision. But I think of the universe like a yin yang symbol, like where it's the circle, right? And the darkness is taking up some space and the light is taking up other space, touching everywhere. Some places you see more darkness and some places you see more light. And that's kind of what the earth is like. But I don't know how we're doing anybody any service by pretending that darkness is not real, because you're just setting people up to encounter something they're ill-equipped to handle. It's like telling people, oh no, you're never going to die. It's okay. You're never going to die. It's okay, but that's not true. So
I really appreciate that. I know I have some medium friends who are like, nope, there's no darkness and there's no evil spirits and they don't exist. And I was down with that idea for a while. And then the more I've talked with different people and different experiences, I think that I love hearing the different and put kind of the different philosophies and then putting them all together. I feel like I'm starting to build my own idea of what it is. So I love to ask that question, especially because I think it also, your perception will have a lot to do with, will also be colored by your own life experiences and
of course,
and also as a medium, I know I don't feel I've connected with any evil spirits, but that's because I'm not, I'm just not sort of open to that.
I don't
And
know that I've connected with evil spirits, because I ward myself pretty great. But I see darkness in humans. I see a lot of it in the world, and I see it in paranormal investigation.
Right.
And in things people have endured as paranormal survivors in haunted houses, and that I endured as a child in a haunted house. But it's not like I go to tap into grandma and instead like Beelzebub comes and says he's going to eat my face. I don't, it's not like that, because I think when you're tapping in as a medium for a client, you're specifically looking for, it's like the people at the airport that hold the sign saying like, Tom Smith, you know who you're going for and you go there. Where you have the trouble with the spirits is like at seances and using pendulums and different things where you're just opening a hole. I always say using a Ouija board, it's like walking into a bar naked at 2 a.m. and saying, who wants to have sex with me? Like you're gonna have takers, but do you really want who you're gonna get? And so you have to be very careful when you're just openly opening it and saying, y'all come. But I think when we're doing work for clients, it's different because we're specifically seeking.
It's the intention.
Yeah. And I think you ward yourself. I think as you go in to get Tom Smith, you say to yourself, okay, nobody else. That's it. It's a small tunnel just for Tom. And you just go for one person. Sometimes a relative of your client will pop in and go, oh, I'm her grandmother. You get that.
Yeah.
But you don't really get, that's more the kind of thing you get if you're just like, who wants to talk to me?
Right. Yeah. That makes so much sense. Now, tell us all, what do you have coming up? What should people subscribe to? I'm going to put a lot of your links down below, and I know there's a lot, but tell me about your projects. Tell me what you're passionate about, obviously, and what you want to share.
I do 3 web series and 2 radio shows, more to come, for the Live Paranormal Network, which is at liveparanormal.com. Tuesday evenings, I do my Raising the Vibration radio show at 5 o'clock. Wednesdays, Haunted Playground at 6 o'clock. And then web series are all at 9 o'clock. Tuesday night, I Am Raising Your Vibration, the companion to the radio show. Haunted Playground After Dark, I'm going to do right after this, the companion to that radio show. And then Friday nights, I do the Soulmate Experience, which I think will soon be a radio show as well. And then the second Saturday of every month is Saturday Night Spiritual at the Founders MCC Church, and it's at SaturdayNightSpiritual.com. And then I teach and I do the crystals at vibrationscrystals.com, SheenaMetalWorkshops.com, SheenaMetalReadings.com for my readings. but all of it can really be found at Sheena Metal Spiritual, which is my main hub, sheenametalspiritual.com. And then I'm on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube. And it's just at Sheena Metal. I think if you type in Sheena Metal, I'm probably the only person that comes up, but you can't let Google correct it to sheet of metal, because then you'll get different things. And that has happened. Even my autocorrect Siri thinks my name is Sheet of Metal, and she just can't get it right. And that's pretty much, that's pretty much everything I'm doing right now. When the world opens up again, more will come. I'm going to stay with live paranormal. So virtual radio, as far as I know, and virtual video, because I love doing it. I'm working on this kind of a show, a talk show on video for them. But I haven't started that yet, but it's going to be sort of where my spiritual work meets my nonprofit work, interviewing people about both. I'm fascinated. It's a lot of what Raising the Vibrations radio show is about. I'm fascinated with people's give back and their passion. Learning about those things is really where I live.
How do you have time for it all?
I know, right? And now I'm in a new relationship the last almost 14 months, and I have 3 kids. So I never had kids before. Luckily,
and 2 dogs and a bird that you didn't have before.
And a cat.
And the cat wasn't yours either?
No, the cat's mine, but I still have her.
Oh, right.
Yeah, now I have also 2 dogs and a bird and 4 guinea pigs and an almost 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, and an almost 23-year-old. I love. All of them are so creative and so spiritual, and I love them like they were my own. But now I'm learning, during the year of COVID, I've learned like how to be a mom, which is a new thing for me. But the most amazing thing in the world.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm so happy to have met you, and thank you so much for coming on the show and
Thank
sharing
you.
all about yourself and your spiritual path. It's been really fun. And again, I will post the link below. But again, everyone, thanks so much for tuning in, and look up Sheena Metal at sheenametalspiritual.com. Did I get that right?
Absolutely. You got it perfectly right. Thank you for this. It was a pleasure. What a joy you are to talk to.
So
anytime you need somebody, you let me know.
You too. Thank you so much.
You bet. Take care, my friend.
Bye.
Bye-bye.